And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 73. This is the Week 14 preview episode where the Cincinnati Bengals head south to Dallas to take on the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Bengals head into this one a record of 4-8 on a 3-game losing streak. Dallas Cowboys are 5-7 on a 2-game winning streak, but somehow Bengals are still favored by 5.5 points. And we're going to do a preview of this game, and maybe that'll make a little bit more sense why the Bengals are favored by 5.5 points, despite the records and how it might look initially. But we're going to talk about all the things that went on in Bengals world, newsworthy things that happened in the Bengals in the last week since that heartbreaking loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers that we'll quickly move on from because Bengals are going to have to play the Steelers again, but we're going to get to relive all these wonderful moments of the end of this Bengals season on HBO or Max or whatever it is, Hard Knocks show, which we're going to talk about and break down the first episode where we get to see an inside look. And this is the first time that Hard Knocks has gone into multiple teams. They're doing all 4 teams in the AFC North for the last few weeks of the regular season until, I think it's going to go until the last team is eliminated from the playoffs. So it's at least going to the end of the regular season for the Bengals, and most likely that's where the Bengals story will be ending. But we did get to see an interesting peek behind the curtain. So we'll talk about some of the differences we saw between players and coaching staffs within the division. We're also going to do, like I said, a breakdown of the Bengals game and some other injury news, some transactions that took place. One longtime Bengals player was released, and he said his goodbyes on Instagram. There was some interesting conversation back and forth on social media about a longtime Bengal leaving and what his prospects could be. But let's get into it. Like I said, when you look at this game initially and you see that Bengals are favored, it's like, as a Bengals fan, that doesn't sound right. But, I mean, the Bengals have been favored in a lot of games this season that they have lost. I don't know whether they're going to turn it around and live up to expectations in this game, but Bengals have the better offense on paper. I mean, the Bengals have the better quarterback because one of the reasons that the Cowboys have struggled more than they have in previous years, the last 3 seasons before this season, Cowboys had won at least 12 games. They didn't do so well in the playoffs, but in the regular season, Cowboys had a lot of success. This year, not so much, mostly due to the fact that Dak Prescott, after signing the biggest contract in NFL history, injured that hamstring. He's on injured reserve, had to have surgery to put the tendon back onto the bone. His hamstring got torn off the bone, so he's out for the rest of the year. Cowboys are starting Cooper Rush at quarterback. He's actually, after the first game where he had to come in and I think he had 45 yards on 25 passes or something like that. But after that, got his feet underneath him, has over 1,000 yards passing already. And let's not forget, last time Bengals played the Cowboys, Cooper Rush was starting in Dallas, and the Bengals lost to Cooper Rush. So that was one of those games that Joe Burrow, I think, was still coming back from an injury. So Joe Burrow is going to be looking for a little bit of revenge. But the Bengals have not won a game in Dallas since, I want to say, 1988 or something like that. Bengals are on an amazing losing streak when they obviously don't play in Dallas that often, but overall the Cowboys have a 10-4 record and they've won the last 5 games against the Bengals. So historically, the Cowboys have the advantage, but I guess the Vegas odds makers are looking at this and saying Cowboys don't have much of an offense outside of CeeDee Lamb. Running game hasn't been great. They've got Ezekiel Elliott as one of their top running backs, but actually Rico Dowdle has stepped up and he got over 100 yards rushing in one of the previous games. So maybe they'll have a little bit more on offense. Dallas historically has a better defense, but they lost Dan Quinn. Now this is going to be another Bengals revenge game. There's going to be a couple of old Bengals coaches on the roster or on the coaching staff on the Cowboys defense. Mike Zimmer, I think he originally was with the Cowboys and then he went to the Bengals and he was with the head coach for the Vikings for a long time. Now he's replacing Dan Quinn as Cowboys defensive coordinator, and they've got Paul Gunther as linebackers coach, who also was linebackers coach when Vontaze Burfict was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. So at least a couple of coaches. And then they got Nick Vigil, linebacker. He's questionable in this game with an ankle injury, but he was a linebacker for a few seasons, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. Nick Vigil's in his 30s, but he's been playing in the league for a long time. He's a former Bengal. I just remember I think it was 2019 Lamar Jackson MVP season. Everybody remembers that play against the Bengals where he did the spin move up through the middle, past Carlos Dunlap, and who else? Nick Vigil. Yeah, that's right. Nick Vigil got put on a poster on that play, so hopefully Bengals will be able to do something similar with Chase Brown or maybe Jamar Chase if he's in Nick Vigil's area. But also defensive end Carlos Dunlap. Or sorry, not Carlos Dunlap, Carl Lawson. I'm thinking about Carlos Dunlap. Carl Lawson. He is going to be playing for the Cowboys at defensive end, and he was the defensive end that the Bengals drafted. I think they drafted him in the 4th round out of Auburn, and they didn't decide to re-sign him to a long-term contract. Instead, they signed Trey Hendrickson from the Saints after Trey Hendrickson had a monster contract year, and people were like, well, who is this Trey Hendrickson guy? We should keep Carl Lawson. They actually let him go to the Jets early in free agency. And then immediately Carl Lawson tore his Achilles, like his first year with the Jets. Never really lived up to that big contract. They let him go. He's bounced around. And finally, I think the Cowboys picked him up on their practice squad earlier this season, brought him up to the active roster after some injuries. So that's going to be interesting to see if Carl Lawson has a good game against his former team, the Bengals. But injuries have played a role in a number of games. And injuries are taking a major toll on the Bengals, including this week. They put 2 players on injured reserve. Number 1, the first of those was kicker Evan McPherson. Money Mac, or maybe Mac, or whatever he has been lately. He's been missing a lot of kicks. And it was another one of these weird situations where he played all the way through the game against the Steelers, made all 5 of his extra points, did all the kickoffs, didn't come out of the game, no issues. But then Zach Taylor said the next day he was feeling soreness during the game, but thought it was just something he could go through. But it's apparently a pulled groin strain or something like that. It's not going to require surgery, but it's something that's going to make him miss the rest of the season, basically. So put him on injured reserve. He's going to be out at least 4 weeks and basically the rest of the season. So they signed kicker Cade York, who was drafted. Evan McPherson was drafted by the Bengals in the 5th round out of Florida. The next year, the Cleveland Browns drafted Cade York from LSU in the 4th round. Everybody saw what a great season McPherson had in his rookie season when they went to the Super Bowl. So people try to copy that, I guess, and draft a kicker high. But Cade York, he made about 75% of his field goals in his rookie season, which is not very good, but it's about how many kicks Evan McPherson's been making this season. But Cade York was released because some of them, it came especially near the end of the season where he seemed to be losing confidence. He started off good, but then end of the season, he was missing them like not even close. So he was out of football for an entire year. Nobody signed him to their team. He finally got a chance with the Washington Commanders this season, but he missed both of his field goals in the opening game of the season, so they let him go. He's been out of the league since then. Now, Bengals need a kicker. So, somewhat ironically, a former Browns kicker, high draft pick, is going to be kicking the rest of the season for the Bengals. I hope he does well. He's actually from Dallas originally, and his girlfriend is a cheerleader for the Dallas Cowboys. So this new kicker for the Bengals just happens to be a Dallas native. They're playing his first game for the Bengals in Dallas, and his girlfriend is going to be on the sidelines as a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. And so he said, I forget, they alternate sidelines like each quarter. So he said, like, a second quarter or fourth quarter, he'll have to turn around and smile at his girlfriend on the sidelines because she's going to be cheering back there. So we got to keep our kickers eye on the prize here. We can't be looking at the cheerleaders when we need you to make a kick, Kate York. So keep your head in the ball game. Don't be shanking kicks because your girlfriend's on the sidelines. I'm sure he's professional. This might be his last chance, though. You never know how many opportunities you're going to get to play or kick in the NFL. Better take advantage of it. But you know what? You always, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, if he doesn't take advantage of it, maybe that will help the Bengals in their draft position. Because that's the other thing. I want the Bengals to do well, but not too well. Because if they win too many of these games, they're going to end up not making it to the playoffs, but also getting a lower draft pick. It's like the worst possible situation, like they were last year. Last year was where they just barely didn't make it into the playoffs, and that meant they got like the worst draft pick you can get and still not be in the playoffs. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But speaking of injuries, keeping it on the injury front, another critical injury for the Bengals, maybe even more irreplaceable than place kicker, because honestly, Evan McPherson wasn't kicking that well anyway, so we could get some other replacement level kicker in here to replace him. But can't replace middle linebacker Logan Wilson, number 55. He had been battling a knee injury, and it was another situation when Zach Taylor, head coach for the Bengals, was being very cagey, not giving out any information. Finally, Kelsey Conway, the reporter, was like, so what happened with his knee, apparently? What happened? Why is he injured? All of a sudden, this guy was playing in the game. We come back from the bye week. Nothing. Zach Taylor acts surprised that anyone would even ask. Oh, what? I think the reason is because NFL coaches, when somebody gets injured and they're not able to play, basically out of sight, out of mind. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way it goes. So I think almost these coaches, when somebody gets released from the team or they get injured and they're not able to play, they don't even think about the players anymore. So they're like, oh, Logan Wilson? Oh, yeah, him. Yeah, the injured guy. Oh, yeah. So what happened was apparently he was feeling sore throughout. It's been something that's maybe, I don't know if it's a chronic thing, but he's been having to deal with apparently. And they didn't say what it was, if it's a cartilage. They just said he had to get it cleaned out. I never know what that means when somebody gets their knee cleaned out. What is got to be cleaned out of your knees? I'm assuming some kind of cartilage or loose something in there that, I don't know. Modern medicine these days can do all kinds of stuff, but he's going to get his knee cleaned out and he's going to be done for the rest of the season. And that means we're going to have to see Akeem Davis-Gaither, who's not known for having great knees. That's part of the reason he wasn't drafted very highly, because he had chronic knee injury where he's basically got like no cartilage in his knees either. So I don't know if that had anything to do with why he was playing so bad in the game against the Steelers, but Akeem Davis-Gaither is most likely going to be playing. He's number 59. He signed a one-year contract with the Bengals for, I think, like $3 million in the offseason, which was kind of high for a guy who plays mostly special teams like kickoffs and punts and stuff. And it was his big opportunity to start in the game, and he did not look very good at all. So he might play again, or they might decide to roll the dice and let somebody else play that could maybe do better. Akeem Davis-Gaither missed a bunch of tackles. He got a penalty on the first play where the ball hit him in the back because he didn't turn around to find where it was. We'll see what happens with that. Personally, I would like to see the rookie undrafted player out of Wisconsin, Muma Jong-Meta. He was making plays in the preseason, big hits, like tackles for loss, just busting through the line and tackling the ball carrier in the backfield. So even just for the entertainment factor, I know Jong-Meta is kind of out of control and maybe not the most, experienced player, so he may get tricked on some plays that a veteran in the league wouldn't fall for, but he's an athletic guy. I know he's not that fast, so, I just want to see something interesting, because Akeem Davis-Gaither was not interesting at all. And we know Joe Bocci, he's not really anything special either. And unfortunately, they don't have a lot of depth at linebacker. Jermaine Pratt, he's going to be playing. Hopefully he plays better than he did against the Steelers because he missed a lot of tackles and did not look good. Hopefully it was the cold. Those guys look really stiff out there, and it also could be a factor of it's late in the NFL season. This is week 14. All these bumps and bruises and soreness is piling up on the body at this point. It's not going to get any easier, but at least the Bengals got that one extra day of rest. So going into this one, Cowboys are going to be without guard Zach Martin. He's going to be out for the rest of the season. He's going to have his third ankle surgery on the same ankle. And he's a Hall of Fame player. Hopefully he can continue his career, but the reporters were asking in Dallas, is this going to be like the end of his career? You never want to, say that. So he was just saying like he's going to focus on getting the surgery and getting better. Defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence has been out for a number of games for the Cowboys. He's still not going to play, so we're probably going to see Carl Lawson like I was talking about. Both of these teams have pretty terrible defenses overall, except they do have star pass rushers. So Trey Hendrickson leads the NFL in sacks coming into this week and at 11.5. But Micah Parsons is also one of the premier pass rushers in the league. He doesn't have quite the number of sacks this season. He missed a few games with an ankle sprain. I think he was out 3 or 4 games. And it was one of those situations where he didn't get a contract that he was looking for. His 2 teammates, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, they got the big contract, the quarterback and the wide receiver. But Jerry Jones, the owner for the Cowboys, decided he didn't want to give his defensive superstar, who some people compare to like the modern day Lawrence Taylor, just because he's so fast and strong and athletic, and he can do, he's not huge, but he can do so many things. He's such a freak athlete, basically. High draft pick out of Penn State, and also a podcaster. I could say fellow podcaster, me and Micah Parsons, doing the same thing, existing in the same space, obviously. But Bengals are going to be up for a challenge from the Cowboys defensive line, mostly because it's looking like Orlando Brown Jr., who struggled clearly with that injury. He tried to come back. This was last game against the Steelers, was Orlando Brown's first game back since being out, and he had tried to fight through it in one game, but he couldn't make it through. I'm not sure. They said it's like his calf or his knee, fibula, like somewhere in the back of his lower leg, something is up. He's not able to move, obviously, so he's going to sit out this game, and it's going to be most likely back to Cody Ford at left tackle and Cordell Volson coming back in at left guard, which they had been playing with when Orlando Brown was out. So Cordell Volson is going to get another chance. He sat out, or he was benched for Cody Ford last week. Maybe that's going to be a situation with Cam Taylor-Britt where after getting benched, he seemed to play better, had a pick 6 in the game against the Steelers. Up and down day for Cam Taylor-Britt, but tackling was better for him. So maybe that's the same type of impact that getting benched is going to have on Cordell Volson, hopefully, because like I said, it couldn't get a whole lot worse for Cordell Volson. And, he's coming up into the 4th year of his contract. Bengals may decide to move on from him if he doesn't show some improvement in the final 5 games of the season. We'll have to see. Bengals are loyal to a fault, though. They keep people on the team, even though they haven't had much production. Charlie Jones, I'm looking at you. But people who haven't really done much, and they keep them, I think, because their draft picks way too long. Also, Tyler Shelvin, you could throw in that same category. Jackson Carman, Zach Carter. There's too many names just popping up off the top of my head way too easily here. But, yeah. But then, on the other side, you have people who are very dedicated to their craft, gave it everything they had, probably exceeded potential of their own body. Trenton Irwin, he was released by the Bengals, and it sounds like it's most likely going to be a permanent release because Trenton Irwin, he went on Instagram and gave his goodbye to the city of Cincinnati and the organization. Thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. So very, heartfelt goodbye, but it was kind of like saying something about when people don't recognize you and your value, then it's time to move on. Almost like, if you're like breaking up, like a romantic relationship breakup kind of thing, like, oh, you don't love me anymore. So he left, and then Joe Mixon, who left in the offseason, went to the Houston Texans. He replied to this message on Instagram, something about how, it's going to be like, it's all going to get better from here for you, for Trenton Irwin, after he leaves the Bengals, basically. So it's some interesting sentiments out of there, but good luck to Trenton Irwin. I didn't see him get picked up by any teams, but he may, if there's some team that really needs a, quality receiver who's going to be able to come in and learn the offense quickly. I mean, you've got guys. Now think about this. We saw Ravens wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who earlier in the season had his most yards in his career against the Bengals. That was the other game Cam Taylor-Britt got benched in, game against the Panthers with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Deontay Johnson was going crazy against the Bengals. Now, they traded him, the Panthers traded Deontay Johnson to the Ravens, and then last week he didn't play in the game, and people were like, well, what's up with that? Because he hasn't been getting really like one target a game since he got traded there. And apparently he refused to play in the game, spent most of the game standing next to the heater on the sidelines. So the Ravens have suspended him at least one game for conduct detrimental to the team. Because obviously you are getting paid to go out there and play football, and that's what you're expected to do. So you can't just go out there, put on a football uniform and stand on the sidelines, and then when they're like, all right, go in, you're like, nah, I'm good. So that's not, that would never work in any job. You can't just be like, no, thanks, boss. I don't feel like working today. So that's the kind of stuff that the Ravens have going on. But that's not the Bengals' problem. Bengals have a great culture. But I'm saying Trenton Irwin, he's not the type of guy. But teams probably aren't going to sign Trenton Irwin, and definitely not going to trade for Trenton Irwin. But it's just crazy how everything's upside down. Now, granted, Trenton Irwin doesn't have like a particularly high ceiling, and even this season he wasn't getting the production that he had been in past years for whatever reason. He got blown up a couple times, but he was showing versatility. Like, he was returning punts. The Bengals have Isaiah Williams replacing him. They picked him up on waivers, and so he's going to be returning punts instead of Trenton Irwin. So probably they felt like they don't need Trenton Irwin returning punts. He's not a great speed receiver. He's more of a possession receiver, but he's too easy for other teams to cover. They're just all over him, and almost the Chargers got a pass interference penalty because they were so all over him that he got a penalty. But so long, happy trails, Trenton Irwin. It was nice knowing you while you were here, but it's just crazy how Bengals, they keep Charlie Jones, who has one catch this season and has been injured for most of it. They keep Jermaine Burton, who is like falling asleep, missing meetings, doesn't even show up for work. But Trenton Irwin is there doing everything he can. They're like, but, I get it. Like, if you can't play football, you can't play. But just, nice guys finish last sometimes. But that's actually a perfect segue, nice guys finishing last, to Hard Knocks. So we got to see a great contrast between, like I said, the different teams in the AFC North, their coaching styles, way they do things. But they tried to kind of normalize it because everybody has the coach gets up and speaks in front of the team to set the tone for the week. It's kind of a standard thing. Head coach gets up in front of the team, delivers a message, almost like a preacher giving a sermon on Sunday morning. Like, this is the game plan. Or, if you're in a business, maybe it's like Monday morning meeting. Okay, here's the plan for the week or whatever it is. So that's what all these coaches do. And you could see that there was obviously everybody has a different personality, but you get to see more of it coming out in these meetings. But not that I was ever impressed by Bengals head coach Zach Taylor's personality or the way he carries himself or presents himself. And the crew at Hard Knocks, they try to make everybody look good. They're not trying to do like character assassination on anybody. They work for the NFL Films. Everybody's in this together. Everybody's on the same team. They're all making money off of this show, basically. So all of these owners want their organization, their team, and their coaches to be shown in the best possible light. The same can't be said maybe for the Giants in the offseason, where they were talking about, man, should we really let Saquon Barkley go? And the owner was like, oh, I don't think so. I'm not going to like that, and all that stuff. And then they let him go, and then Saquon Barkley has an amazing season with the Eagles this season. The Giants look like idiots. But Bengals don't want to be on the wrong end of that kind of stuff. But this was a great episode because we got to see, for the first time, two teams scheming against each other. So this was interesting to see how Mike Tomlin was calling out Joe Burrow, saying, like, you got to watch this slippery son of a gun. He's all over the place. And Jamar Chase, look what he's doing against the Ravens. You got to watch out for this guy. And Chase Brown, running back, he might not know your name now, but you better make sure that he knows your name on Monday morning, meaning, like, you better, get physical with him. And so he's got something to feel the next day. So Mike Tomlin was getting his team all fired up, ready to go, as all these coaches were doing. But Zach Taylor, honestly, I barely remember anything he said. It is just like Zach Taylor in the press conferences. It wasn't like I was surprised that it wasn't like a night and day difference how he was in front of the cameras versus how he was in front of his own team. But just like I'm not excited about Zach Taylor talking in a press conference, if I were a player on the Bengals, I wouldn't get excited about anything Zach Taylor had to say in any of these meetings. Like, he just doesn't get you fired up and inspired. You hear other people describing Mike Tomlin in the episode, and they're all like, oh yeah, like, I'm ready to run through a brick wall for Mike Tomlin. Nobody says anything about that, about Zach Taylor, but I'm trying to keep a level head and think, okay, well, the Steelers won the game. And so there was all these clips of, like, Mike Tomlin calling out, okay, we need a play from Nick Herbig right now. He's going to rush around Orlando Brown, get the strip sack on Joe Burrow. And then, like, 2 seconds later, that's exactly what happened. And he had been talking about that all week, about Herbig, we need a play out of you. And then Herbig into the game does the exact same thing. And then they show Mike Tomlin going up to Herbig and, like, putting his arm around him and getting in his ear and saying, like, this isn't a surprise. This ain't no lightning strike. You built for this. You built for this. And it's just, so emotional. And you don't see any of that connection from Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor just got his little play sheet and with his headset on. And he's like, okay, here we go. Next play. Yep. And then, they score a touchdown. Everybody's running off the field. He's just giving them, like, low five. Not even high five or any kind of secret handshake. It's just, like, low five. And he's like, great job, nice job, great job. He could literally be, like, a Little League baseball coach out there. He doesn't curse. Zach Taylor does not curse. He'll say, like, dang or gee willikers or something like that. But it's just, I don't know. Nothing excites me about Zach Taylor so far. So we're going to have to see as the series plays out if the Bengals as an organization can look good. They don't want to lose all these games and be just going into a downward spiral while the rest of the country is watching. So it would be better to win some of these games, at least so we don't have to look at Zach Taylor constantly getting in front of the camera and being all sad and talking about, oh, we were just one play away and we almost got him. The only thing I remember about Zach Taylor is he looked dead in the camera. Everybody had their, like, monologue camera right in front of their face, and they did, like, a one-on-one interview with all the coaches and quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff. And there's some interesting tidbits, but Zach Taylor just did the same thing about, well, this is a great opportunity for us to go in here and show what we're all about against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh my God. He said that, so many times it's getting nauseating at this point, just because he's been saying all season, well, we got, so many more games left. We got 10 more games left. Well, we got 5 more games left now to go out there and show what we're all about. But as everybody has become well aware of, the record is 4-8. They're most likely not going to make the playoffs. And so reality is setting in. The people are asking a lot of questions. The reporters are asking a lot of questions of the players and coaches as if the season is over. It's like a eulogy for the season. Where did it all go wrong? What could you have done better? What would you have done differently? All these type of questions, and not really focusing on this game against the Dallas Cowboys. But the other thing that people were talking about coming out of Hard Knocks wasn't even football related. It was the fact that Joe Burrow, out of nowhere, mentioned the fact that he ordered a replica of the Dark Knight Batmobile, Batman Batmobile. So that's not going to be street legal, apparently. And then Jamar and T were standing next to Joe Burrow discussing what they would do with it. He said maybe he would drive it on Halloween, but he'd have to get like a full Batman costume. And then they talked about where would you wear the Batman costume? What would you do with the cape? Would you wear it into the club? Would you drive the Batmobile to the club with the cape and the bat suit on? All things that needed to be addressed. The reporters were sure to ask multiple questions about that. Joe Burrow seemed very uncomfortable, didn't seem eager to address it, and was ready to move the discussion onto football-related questions as soon as possible. Same thing with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The reporters kept asking him, what's up with the Batmobile? They tried to sweep that under the rug as quickly as possible. But that's what happens when you say stuff on camera with a microphone. Obviously, people are going to jump all over that. So Joe Burrow I hope Joe Burrow doesn't clam up and not be himself now that anything he says gets out there. But like he said in his press conference this week, Joe Burrow, he trusts the people to basically do a good job and make him look good. So I don't know if he's watching it. Jamar Chase said he hasn't watched it yet. He's going to wait until it's all released at the end and go back and binge watch it. But if I were a player, I might watch it just to see if I could get any kind of, competitive advantage, find out anything, any kind of little tidbits you could use against the other team to use against them. Any little bit can help, but we're not going to see too much of the Bengals on Hard Knocks in this next second episode because the Bengals are playing on Monday Night Football and the episode comes out on Tuesday. So it's too quick of a turnaround to get this Cowboys Monday night game onto that. We're just going to see, whatever they talk about in practice this week leading up into the game. But it's going to be probably more about the Browns-Steelers game that happened this week. Steelers won that one also. So Steelers are looking like they're in the driver's seat for the AFC North division, unfortunately. Bengals and Browns are toiling at the bottom. But we did see another interesting game out of Jameis Winston on last Monday night. That was after I recorded my previous episode. So that game, I think it was against the Broncos on Monday Night Football. Jameis set the Browns franchise record for passing yards in a game, 497 yards. He had 4 touchdown passes, but also 3 interceptions, including 2 pick sixes. So when you include the pick six yardage, I think Jameis had like 670 combined passing yards between him and the other team. But he gave an amazing... Well, first of all, there was an amazing graphic of Jameis Winston in the game. They showed Bo Nix being a regular human being, just like flipping the ball up in the air, looking in the camera, being like tough football player guy. Then you have Jameis Winston on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, totally like clowning, mugging for the camera, being a ridiculous person, throwing up the W sign and eating the W, pantomiming like he's eating the W. Everybody knows that. He did it with both hands. Then he did 2 fingers up to the Lord. And then after the game, after the Browns lost, which, it was such a crazy game. And then Jameis Winston, they're interviewing him in the post-game press conference. And then he just talks about how that, that's not him, and how he's just praying to the Lord to deliver him from pick sixes. Amazing. I can't recall hearing a player talk about praying to the Lord to deliver me from pick six. Beautiful. Beautiful. And that wasn't even like a question that anybody asked. This is out of nowhere. So the Bengals got lucky that they didn't have to play Jameis Winston backing up Deshaun Watson when he tore his Achilles. They brought in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He obviously was not ready to go. And if they had played Jameis Winston, they might have lost. But they had to play Jameis Winston later. But game against the Cowboys, staying focused on that. Cooper Rush, he's been looking better. Bengals defense, we'll see if they can pick it up in the secondary. But the thing about the Cowboys is they have a -7 turnover differential. I mean, they've given it away much more than they've taken it away on defense. Bengals are pretty even. They're only -1. So not outstanding, but not as bad as the Cowboys. So the Bengals can force some turnovers from this Cowboys offense. That might be enough to swing it in their favor. But since we know Bengals probably don't have a chance to make it to the playoffs, they were asking, what is your guys' motivation for even playing in these games anymore? Which is kind of sad, asking these professionals, like, I mean, your season's basically over. I mean, why do you even need to go out there anymore? But for Jamar Chase, he still needs to accumulate stats. He still wants to win the Triple Crown, they call it, for most catches, most yards, most touchdowns by a player in the league. He's got a little bit of work to do going into this game. He's, I think, 5 behind. Off to double check. Or now that Brock Bowers, who was ahead by 5, I think he got 3 more catches, so he'd be up by 8. Let me check the stats if they've updated it yet. But Jamar's got 79. He's tied with Cowboys receiver CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, not updated yet. Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions has 81. So Jamar, in terms of catches, he's got a little bit of work to do, but Jamar has a lot more yards going into this game. Justin Jefferson for the Vikings had a big day today, so he's going to be close in the terms of yardage. But Jamar Chase has 13 touchdowns, and so far nobody else was in double-digit touchdowns. So Jamar still got a huge lead, but he's at the top of all these categories. So he's making a case for maybe Offensive Player of the Year, something like that. Joe Burrow, he's obviously having what he said in his own words was his best season ever. He said overall he thought he was playing his best just in terms of making decisions, accuracy. He's not turning the ball over. I think he's got 30 touchdown passes, close to the top of the league. Sam Darnold had 5 touchdown passes for the Vikings today. But Joe Burrow has been playing out of his mind, jump passes, all kinds of different angles, like throwing down, throwing from 45 degrees. Joe Burrow is going to be throwing like upside down next time. So in his own words, Joe Burrow has been playing the best he's ever played. And yet, the Bengals have one of the worst records of Joe Burrow's career. And that just goes to show you how bad the other parts of the team around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been. It's not good enough. They say you're only as strong as your weakest link in the NFL, and it's all about matchups. So if you have a great player, okay, the other team can just neutralize that great player and then exploit the other matchup where you have some guy who probably shouldn't even be in the NFL out on the field for the Bengals, and they just press on that weakness all day. So if the Cowboys are able to take away Jamar Chase, Bengals still have T. Higgins. That's the thing with T. Higgins healthy, Bengals offense is on another level. So hopefully everybody stays healthy all the way through this game, and Bengals can continue to put up big stats. And at least if both of these teams have terrible defenses, it'll probably be another high-scoring game like it was the previous weeks where the Bengals have been, scoring 30-plus points and still losing the game. If we still get 5 touchdowns from the Bengals, even if they lose, at least I get to see 5 Bengals touchdowns. Something good had to happen, unless they get, beat by like 10 touchdowns or something ridiculous. But I don't think that's going to happen. So either way, if it's a high-scoring game, it'll probably be fun. And then I'll get to go back and watch like this weird Simpsons thing. I'm not going to watch the Simpsons thing live. I still want to see the regular game, but it'll be interesting just to see if it adds anything new or different, or if it's just kind of a gimmick. That's probably what it would be more like for somebody like who follows the game like me. But for uniform combinations, the Cowboys are going to be in the all white. They're going white helmets, white jerseys, white pants. I would assume white socks as well. So they're going with some kind of all white out color rush combination. That means the Bengals are going to be wearing black jerseys with white pants, orange socks, orange helmets, obviously. So that will be more of a home game look for the Bengals, even though they're going to be the road team. Not that it makes any difference, but I think that's... Was it the uniform combo they wore in the Super Bowl? I think it might have been black jerseys, white pants, orange socks. So hopefully the Bengals have a little bit better luck than they did wearing those uniforms in the Super Bowl. But at least it's not the solid color where they went like all white or all orange. They lost both of those games this season, but those games were at home, so it doesn't count. But I'm excited to watch this game. I know there's a lot of Cowboys fans out there, so most of the people who are watching this game are probably going to be rooting for the Cowboys. Bengals are, the small team underdog, but they're favored in this game. So hopefully the Bengals win. We can finally come back and break this losing streak and talk about a Bengals win. It would be a lot more fun to watch on Hard Knocks and to discuss it on a podcast and so many other things. And just so I don't have to see Zach Taylor's sad face apologizing for losing again and again and just saying the same things about how next week is going to be a great opportunity or whatever. Can't take it anymore. So if you have been with this team this long, you've been with this podcast for this long, I know you're going to stick with it to the end, just like you should stick with this podcast to the end. If you've done so, don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, give me a rating, do all that kind of stuff. Leave some kind of comment. Send me an email at bengalbitespodcast@gmail.com so I could interact with you and find out what you think about this team. Tell me what you think the Bengals record is going to be for the rest, the final record for the Bengals. Like, are they going to win 2 more games, 3 more games? Are they going to win out? What is it going to be? Is Zach Taylor going to actually avoid another losing season? Or is this going to go down as another losing season for Zach Taylor? So we'll have plenty of time to discuss all that. In the next episode, we're going to break down this Cowboys game. But until next time, I'm going to leave you with a WhoDey and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.